With Destiny 2's Year 6 DLC right around the corner, we're going to be going over our best Void Titan build so you can be prepared for LightFall. We'll be making a post-LightFall Void Titan build once we know more about how the new aspects, fragments, and guns are going to be affecting the current build. If you like this build, remember to hit the like button and subscribe to see more broken builds like this one. Let's get right on into it. First things first, we're going to be using the Titan Bubble, aka Ward of Dawn. This is going to be great for us if we do any damage phases because it's going to give us and our teammates weapons light, boosting our damage. We don't really need Sentinel Shield, which is more of a roaming ad clearing super, since this build is great for ad clearing in general. Next up, we're going to be taking Rally Barricade. First off, it has a shorter cooldown time, which is mainly what we're going to be using in this case, as well as when you're behind it, you do get a faster reload speed, so that's a nice little bonus. If you're going to be doing any hard content like Grandmaster Nightfalls, I'd suggest bringing Tower Barricade. It is a little bit slower and it's harder to get back to your abilities, though with Tower Barricade, you are going to have more cover for you and your teammates. Next up, we're going to be taking Strafe Lift. This is always going to be your pick. It is the best jumping ability for Titans. Unless you're going to be trying to Sword Skate or something like that, Strafe Lift is where it's at. Next up, we're going to be looking at the Vortex Grenade. This build focuses on throwing a lot of grenades. The Vortex Grenade is by far going to output the most amount of damage as well as weaken enemies. We're going to be taking Shield Throw over Shield Bash. Now, some people might want to run Shield Bash, and while this can be useful, I prefer to have Shield Throw so that I can do some damage at range, as well as I can gain some shield back, and I don't have to run all the way up to enemies just to be able to get this ability. Since we're going to be wanting to use our melee, grenade, and barricade as much as possible, being able to throw it from a distance allows us to proc our buffs a lot more often than if we have to run up to a group of enemies just to be able to activate our melee. In the new season, I might start running Shield Bash. It honestly just kind of depends. We're going to be seeing that some of the champions, the overload champions, are going to be able to be stunned with suppressing, which is an option on Shield Bash. So keep that up in the air that in LightFall, Shield Bash might be the better option if you're running against champions, but overall, I'm picking Shield Throw. Moving on to the aspects. For aspects, I'm picking Controlled Demolition and Bastion. Controlled Demolition makes it so that whenever you hit a target with an ability or a volatile explosion, it also in turn makes them volatile. And it's going to be giving us 2 fragment slots to choose from. We're going to be choosing Bastion because this allows us to cast our barricade and grant us and our allies over shield. This option grants better survivability for both you and your teammates and is a great overall option. This gives us 3 fragment slots to choose from. And for this build, we're going to be taking Echo of Instability as our first fragment. This is allowing us so that whenever we get kills with grenades, it's giving volatile rounds to our void weapons, and our weapons now cause explosions. This is one of the key kickers to make this build an absolute ad clearing machine. The second fragment we're going to be choosing is the Echo of Undermining. This makes it so that our grenades weaken targets, making them take an extra 15% damage from any source. Not only does this power up our grenade, but it also offers us another way to cause weaken for any sort of damage phase we have. This means that if you're going into any boss fight, all you have to do is throw 1 grenade and you've automatically weakened the boss, and they're going to be taking an extra 15% damage from every source. This particular fragment could be changed out if you are going to be running something with weaken. Since weaken does not stack on each other, something like the Tractor Cannon, which could become very useful in this new season, applies its own weaken and is going to give the same effect, if not better. So there's no point in actually running this if you're going to be already weakening these targets, or if there's a new way to cause weakening, such as a new mod that's going to be replacing weaken clear. The last fragment we're going to be choosing is the Echo of Remnants. This buffs our grenade damage by up to 115%. That's more than double our classic grenade damage. What this fragment does is make our Vortex Grenade last even longer. So if you're throwing this on any sort of champion or boss, you're going to be doing more than double the amount of damage than normal. This lingering effect combined with the actual weakening effect does in turn cause more damage, as well as we're going to have other ways to boost our actual grenade damage. One of the biggest catalysts for this build is going to be, of course, you saw it coming, the Heart of Inmost Light. This is the classic exotic that every Titan's using right now. And it's honestly one of the best around because 1, it gives you up to 800% regen speed on all of your abilities, as well as boosting the damage for each of your abilities. This has been one of my favorites because it just allows you to ability spam all over the place. And honestly, I'll probably keep using it until it gets nerfed to the ground. This is a staple when it comes to being a Titan. Now let's talk about ways to improve this build. None of this is actually needed, but all of these things are ways that you can actually buff the amount of uptime you have on your grenades and your abilities in general. First things first, we're going to be looking at our helmet. For mods, there's nothing that's really needed, though Harmonic Siphon is good, but this could change with LightFall. This gives us the ability to use weapons that match our subclass to create orbs of power, and it has great synergy with Echo of Instability, so we want to be using void weapons anyway. Moving on to the arms, we're going to want to take Impact Induction. This allows melee attacks attacks to reduce grenade cooldown by up to 20% for one of the mods and up to 30% for having two of those mods in place. I usually just run around with one impact induction on since 20% is good enough to keep the grenades coming, but I also have very good discipline gear, so if you have lower discipline gear, it might be worth taking two. Grenade kickstart is also a good option. It doesn't give quite as much as it only gives 15% for one and 25% for two. This gives a good way to get your grenade energy back immediately and not have to think about throwing your melee as soon as you throw your grenade. For our chest piece, you could take extra reserves or you could take one of the damage reducing mods. There's nothing here that we can really use to buff our grenade ability. Whatever you want to use, that's up to you. The same thing kind of applies for our legs. You could take Innervation, Orbs of Restoration, Insulation, or Invigoration, all of which give you some ability energy whenever you pick up an Orb of Power. All of these are great options since you're going to be wanting to spam all of your abilities in the first place. Moving on to the mark, this is where a lot of the magic happens. We're going to be putting two bomber mods on. You can use just one if you really want to, since there's not a huge increase from 1 to 2 mods. It goes from 16% to 20%. This means with impact induction as well as bomber, every time you throw your grenade, you're immediately going to get 16 to 20% back, as well as every time you throw your melee and hit, you're going to be getting another 20 to 30% back. So you're immediately having up to 50% of your grenade back as soon as you throw it. Other general mods that I like to run with the Elemental Well set, since this gives you a lot of ability energy back and it keeps the ability spam coming. What I like to do is run Elemental Ordnance. This creates Elemental Wells whenever you get a kill with your grenade. The other one that I also really like to run is Reaping Wellmaker. This makes it so that every time you use your class ability, the next weapon kill you get will spawn a Void Well. Pair this with Bountiful Wells, and now all of your other well creating methods create 2 wells instead of 1. So as you're running around spamming all your abilities, you're getting 10% back to all abilities if it's matching your subclass, i.e. Void Wells, and 10% back to the lowest if you're not matching. Since this is a Void build and the Reaping Wellmaker makes Void Wells as well, this means that every single well you're going to be picking up is going to be giving you 10% to all your abilities. This is another key component in keeping the ability spam coming. Always throwing your grenades, throwing your melee, as well as putting down any barricades that you have available. This keeps the momentum going. This paired with the Heart of Inmost Light makes it so that your abilities are constantly being refreshed. Other mods that you can consider running with this, I like to run Fonts of Might. This makes your weapon even more powerful. This plus Volatile rounds is absolutely disgusting. The other mod that I also like to run is Well of Tenacity. This gives you 10% damage resistant whenever you pick up a Void Well, and because we're running a Void subclass and massively creating Void Wells, this gives you the opportunity to run around and pick up all Void Wells you see in the area, giving you abilities back and keeping you healthy. Another mod that I also like to run is Elemental Armaments. This makes it so that whenever you use weapons that match your subclass, you have a chance of creating wells. So this is another way to create more wells if you're finding that you can't keep up with your abilities. Now let's talk about what guns you might want to be running. First things first, let's talk about kinetic weapons. In the new update, kinetic weapons are going to be getting a buff, so it is worth considering using kinetic over stasis, though it shouldn't matter too much. I like to use this spot as a heavy hitter spot since I like to use my main weapon as an energy weapon. This includes shotguns, fusion rifles, grenade launchers, and things of that nature. Moving on to our energy slot, we want to be taking a void weapon, mainly a primary weapon. This can include a submachine gun, AR, hand cannon, whatever you like to use best. I like to use a submachine gun since you can put out a lot of damage with them right now. One of my favorite is going to be the funnel web. This should be fairly easy to get as most of the player base does have funnel web since it is a world drop, though the Unforgiven from Duality could be even better with the combos that it has. The best combination that you're looking for here is more than likely going to be Demolitionist, Adrenaline Junkie, or Golden Tricorn. Demolitionist gives grenade energy back whenever you get a kill, as well as you can reload your weapon every time you throw a grenade. And with this build, you're going to be wanting to spam your grenades as much as possible, so getting that grenade energy back is just going to help that happen even more, as well as it's going to continuously feed volatile rounds to your weapon, and this in turn is going to be feeding your grenade energy back. Adrenaline Junkie is also my number one pick here. This makes it so that you can get up to 5 kills and or 1 grenade kill, which then gives your weapon 33% damage, which is double the amount of Frenzied. Since you're going to be throwing your grenades like crazy, it's easy to proc this 33% increase by getting 1 grenade kill and then keeping it up by just killing enemies in general. Since you do have volatile rounds, this is incredibly easy. Golden Tricorn is also a very good option since you can get up to 50% boost if you get a weapon kill and a grenade kill, though it's only 15% if you just have 1. It's a little bit harder to get up to that 50% boost. I just find that Adrenaline Junkie is a little bit easier to proc, so that's my number one pick. I'm currently looking for an Unforgiven roll with Demolitionist and Adrenaline Junkie, or Demolitionist and Golden Tricorn, since this should be a popular combo with this build. Moving on to our heavy weapon, a void weapon is definitely going to be best, though it's not necessary. Because we can put on things like Fonts of might and have massive wells everywhere, this means we can have a 25% damage to our heavy weapon, which makes using any void weapon that much better. Some of the weapons I'm looking at using are going to be the Taipan, though this is getting a nerf. For my rocket launcher, I'm looking at either Royal Entry or the Two-Tailed Fox. Royal Entry is a solid option, and Two-Tailed Fox might be getting a pretty big buff in this season since it is getting a catalyst and could potentially be a complete champion stunner. Other great options to consider could be the Commemoration machine gun and or the Crowd Pleaser grenade launcher. Though this slot isn't necessary to be a void weapon, use whatever feels best. I find that void weapons can do the most damage with Font of Might. The best things you can do with this build is get in a cycle. There are 2 cycles that I like to run. The first being Barricade, Shield Throw, then Grenade. This will turn your grenade into a mini nuke. Because you have Heart of Inmost Light, not only are you going to be regenning all of your abilities very quickly, this also gives you a buff to your actual grenade damage. And when you have that 2 times grenade damage and you throw that vortex grenade that is both weakening and lingering, this now makes your grenades absolutely deadly and can do upwards of 115% damage compared to normal vortex grenades. The other cycle that I like to run is Barricade, Grenade, and then Shield Throw. This does give a little bit more uptime on your grenade, though it does reduce the grenade damage by a bit. To round it all up, we're constantly having uptime on our abilities, more importantly our grenades, since this is a grenade spam build. So we're running around, throwing our grenades, getting a kill. We're then loading volatile rounds back into our weapon, and while we have a tiny bit of downtime in between our abilities, we're then using our weapon, which has buff damage up to 33% because of Adrenaline Junkie, as well as volatile rounds, which then increases your damage by that much more. Not to mention, whenever a target explodes from volatile rounds, it can spread that volatility to the next target, and you can start a chain reaction of just absolutely decimating the entire field. Because of our mods, we use both our grenades and our barricade to create wells for us. Bountiful Wells gives us more wells and energy back, as well as can give us up to 25% damage and damage resistance. Because we're constantly throwing our grenades, throwing our shield, and slamming our barricade, we're constantly doing a ton of damage, clearing ads, as well as having uptime on our overshield from both our melee and our barricade. This means constant overshield, constant grenades, constant volatile rounds, constant damage. This is the build that I'll be bringing into LightFall in the main campaign. Let me know your thoughts on the build, try it out, see how it feels. Let me know what you would change about it or how you'd improve it. That's it for me. Peace out.